Benvinguts i benvingudes. L'ús de la mascareta ha deixat de ser obligatori als nostres espais. Malgrat això, sentiu-vos lliures de portar-ne si ho creieu oportú, sobretot si esteu refredats i teniu tos. Com sempre us demanem que mantingueu els vostres telèfons desconnectats i qualsevol altre aparell que emeti senyal acústic o lluminós. Així mateix, us recordem que no està permesa la realització de cap mena d'enregistrament de l'activitat.
Sigueu benvinguts i benvingudes a la segona jornada del Fòrum Internacional Multireligiós Manresa 2022, Cruïlla de Camins, una resposta intergeneracional multireligiosa a la crisi social i ambiental, organitzat per Religions for Peace Internacional i l'Ajuntament de Manresa, en el marc de Manresa 2022 Transforma, la commemoració dels 500 anys de l'estada d'Ignasi de Loiola a la ciutat de Manresa. Obrint la segona jornada del fòrum, a continuació tindrà lloc la sessió titulada Col·laboració multisectorial i multireligiosa per aconseguir ciutats sostenibles per a tots i totes, comoderat pel doctor Francis Cúria, secretari del Consell General Africà de Líders Religiosos, Religions for Peace, i el senyor Thomas Keppen, oficial de programes per a Consells Interreligiosos de Religions for Peace.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Is the mic okay? Yeah. Thank you. Your Eminences, I think this double echo, so. Your Eminences, your Graces, your Lordships, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this morning session on the multisectoral and multireligious collaboration to realize sustainable cities for all. We are co-moderating this session with Mr. Thomas Keppen, and I will give some opening remarks and look at what questions our panel today will be looking at. After that, Mr. Keppen will introduce the speakers and go into posing the questions to them one by one so that we can hear their responses. Today we are hoping that we're going to have some interaction with the plenary. So if you have issues to raise, we ask you to listen keenly and raise them and also ask questions to our panel. We hopefully will have 15-20 minutes at the end of this session for some interaction so that this comes as an interactive session. First, as part of my open remarks, I want to say that, as you heard, I come from Africa, from the Africa Council of Religious Leaders. And when we were invited to this, myself and my co-chair, Sheikh Mubaje, who was with you yesterday, I hope he's coming soon, we had our governing board meeting in October, end of October, and we decided to consider this topic as part of the sessions of our governing board meeting and to create a formal document as our input into this conference, because we knew by then that we were coming here and we wanted to give our input, having had consultations with a wider range of people in Africa. I therefore have our signing statement on the communique of Interfaith roadmap to Manresa and COP27. This document was also delivered to the COP27. Saving the Environment, Securing Peace is the title of our communique, and I would wish this communique to be formally recognized at this conference. And we have 5 recommendations. I will not read the recommendations, but I wish that those 5 recommendations be considered when the final pact of this conference is being considered by the drafting team that is drafting the final communique of this conference. Needless to say that cities, as we heard yesterday, are complex societies, and that we need the collaboration of all actors for us to create resilient cities. We need the academic world to design and construct cities that are resilient and sustainable. We need other members of civil society to raise their voices so that the justice that Sister Agatha talked about yesterday can be secured. We need governments to fund the infrastructure and to leave spaces for people living in cities to live so in a secure and sustainable manner. We need the schools and the health facilities within cities that are serving all people within those cities. And we need the religious actors who provide services, but also add a critical voice in ensuring that those cities are spiritually sound and that they don't destroy sacred sites and holy places, and they preserve the dignity of the human person. So a multisectoral approach in the consideration of developing resilient and sustainable cities is an important aspect of the work that is in front of us. And the religious actors can play a big role in convening the multisectoral approach to dealing with and building resilient and sustainable cities. Personally, I've had interaction with the UN Habitat on thinking about how cities can be comfortable for religious actors. And we know that the UN Habitat is very keen to get the input of religious actors in the development of cities of the future. Yesterday we had statistics about the percentages of people living with cities. In Africa, it's estimated that within the next 20 years, more than 50% of the African population will live in cities. And those cities are growing, but are growing in an unplanned way. We need to plan, we need to raise our voices, and we need to integrate a multisectoral approach in the development of sustainable and resilient cities that dignifies the lives of all of us, that are multi-religious, that are multi-ethnic, that are multisectoral. And it is therefore our role and duty as religious actors to play that convening role, because in many parts of Africa, when religious leaders call people together, the other sectors of society will come. The business people will come, the civil society actors will come, the academicians will come. In any case, most of the biggest academic institutions are hosted by religious actors. And therefore, the religious leaders have huge convening power. Are religious leaders convening? Are they playing their role of convening the multisectoral approach in dealing with the developmental challenges of our age? It is our duty and it is our role that we convene and help our communities to have the dialogue, to have the discussions, and to have the resolutions that is going to move our cities forward. And to consider these issues, I now invite Mr. Keppen to pose the questions to our panelists and to see how best, what we can do to convene, what are the barriers that exist that stop us from convening, and what are the next steps we can concretely take, and also not just take, but also convince others to take, because we are few here. There are hundreds of thousands of other religious actors out there. We need to create a mechanism of convincing others to play this role. Thank you and welcome, Mr. Taki.
Thank you, Dr. Correa, for that opening and framing this discussion today. As we all know, the crises and the challenges that we face are massive and critical, and confronting these crises requires us to scale up our ongoing work. And this process of scaling up requires the engagement of all stakeholders. So that means secular civil society, faith-based actors. It also means academia, the private sector, and civic leaders. So I'm really looking forward to asking these panelists today who have experience in this work about working in different sectors, about how do you bring all these diverse stakeholders together? How are you seeing the work happen to truly confront environmental and social crises? But also, what are the challenges? I mean, we know that the crises are still present. So there are obviously some lacunae in our work. So how can we address these challenges and truly strengthen our collaboration and solve these problems? So I'd like to begin by introducing our first speaker from Japan, Reverend Taishi Kato. He's a priest of the Hattori Tenmango Shinto Shrine. Please, Reverend Kato.
Thank you so much for inviting me to this conference. I'm a Shinto priest. I'm from Japan, and maybe most of people know about Shinto. So let me briefly introduce about Shinto. And Shinto is indigenous faith of the Japanese, and it's really related to Japanese culture. And the land of Japan is surrounded by the sea, and 70% of the land is mountain and has a lot of rivers and lakes and small islands. Thanks to 4 seasons, spring, summer, fall, and winter, we receive a lot of blessing from nature, such as fish and vegetables from the mountain. And that is why we show gratitude to nature. But on the other hand, Japan is also famous for natural disasters, such as typhoon, tsunami, and earthquake. And our ancestors may have thought that the natural disasters were raised because they disturbed the harmony of nature through our way of living. So therefore, Japanese people try to keep the harmony of nature by finding themselves as a part of nature. So actually in Shinto, human beings is seen as a part of nature. We are not centered on human beings. We are part of nature. So that's why we are so show respect to nature, and also we are so scared of nature. Yeah, we cannot control nature. And I believe that Shinto, the way of living based on harmony of nature, can bring a good solution to environmental crisis to all over the world. And as I mentioned before, Shinto is kind of Japanese way of living, and the concept of religion actually imported from Western countries in 19th centuries. Before that, we don't have a notion of religion in Japan, and so in Shinto, there are no concept of doctrine, dogma, or founder. And Shinto is kind of, most of people think, even most of Japanese people don't know the word Shinto, but around 80% of Japanese people visit Shinto shrine without religious thinking. So if you ask, what is your religion to Japanese, in general, most of people answer, I have no religion, but they visit Shinto shrine and also Buddhism temple and church. We celebrate Christmas and we visit Shinto shrine and temple on New Year's Day. So it's more related to our way of life, and also actually there are 80,000 Shinto shrines in Japan. It's more than a convenience store, and I believe that historical resources held by shrine are very important in building a better society. And I'm the 22nd Shinto priest in my family members, and I serve at Hattori Tenjingu Shrine, which is located in Japan, Osaka. And this Shinto shrine is dedicated to the deity of food, and there are many types of visitors, such as like runners, and they have a problem of like legs, and it's one of the really unique Shinto shrine. But based on this type of history of shrine, we can like solve the social issues. So for instance, the area of wellness can be said to be very common to all over the world, and physical and mental health has been widely affected. Plenty of people become more anxious, but for some, COVID-19 has sparked then amplified much more serious mental health problems. In order to tackle this type of mental and physical social issue, I engage in setting up festivals at Shinto Shrine. The name is Food Festival. And we have planned to food festival under the deities of food and involving business and government together with local residents and also runners. We set up an executive committee and designed the festival with a committee. And the festival featured food-friendly experiences and events ranging from ancient Japanese wisdom to the latest technology. And actually, I bring one of the example. This is after Westernization, we just start wearing shoes. But before that, we just wear this kind of Japanese, we call this is geta. And this is really effective in making balance. And let me try to wear this one. A lot of people visit Shinto Shrine and then wear this type of geta, we call geta shoes. But this is really good to promote. Doing sports, and there are many modern 50,000 visitors. And the festival become really good spaces and conveys the importance of walking and the joy of running. And now physical, mental health is an issue. I think this is one of the key to solve the issue of physical and mental health. And the involvement of multisectoral collaboration, including electronic companies and airlines and running manufacturers and sports manufacturers and government, civic leaders and runners and even university in a religious festival has shown that we can work together to tackle social issues. And in conclusion, by creating public spaces for festivals with diverse sectors, we extended the potential of religious institutions to approach social issues and build community. I could say that academia, civil society, governments, and the private sector can engage faith communities to realize sustainable cities for all. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, Reverend Kato. I just think this is such an amazing illustrative example of what religious institutions can do when they're part of these multisectoral collaborations. So your faith enriches your knowledge. As you said, these temples, they hold historical resources to address our crises. Even just the Shinto concept of living in harmony with nature is what's critical to confront crises and danger. And I also just see that, businesses, governments, local citizens, gathering around the deity of the foot to hold these festivals of the feet, where this is amazing. You're addressing physical, mental problems, but also you're creating a shared green space. This is really important for cities. I just love this example. Thank you so much. So now we're moving on to South Africa with Ms. Merlin Chitharai. She's a member of the youth media team of Religions for Peace.
So, Jai Gurudev, Namaste, and Vanakkam to everybody. Thank you for the opportunity to share at this very important meeting today. So, as observed, we are currently living in times of great socio-economic and environmental difficulties and challenges. Our cities are faced with overpopulation, overpollution, shortage of basic facilities and needs such as water, electricity, and food. Architectural infrastructures are poorly maintained and equipped for resilience and adaptation against our changing climates. Mass globalization and overconsumption has left humanity living in spiritual disharmony with ourselves and Mother Earth. So we can see that life is basically asking us to pause, reflect, and take another course of action. One that is holistic, healthy, sustainable, and holds the essence of faith, spirituality, and religion. So how do we build resilient, sustainable cities that is inclusive and safe? And how do we approach it from a multi-religious perspective? Multi-religious and multi-stakeholder collaboration creates an opportunity for creative problem solving, for impactful interventions. But it starts with us first as faith actors, becoming instrumental and key role players in shifting the mindset of communities at grassroots levels and at national policy making levels. So if the church, mosque, and temple always led by example, setting a different precedent, it has an opportunity to bring effective change for the current and future generations. It creates an opportunity to practice a different way of life that not only imbibes rich scriptural knowledge to live in a righteous life in harmony with the earth, but to bring about a revolution in consciousness and in actions to an ecological one. So faith structures can also show how to live sustainably with ecological actions by imbibing green technologies of rainwater harvesting, solar energy, clean energy, organic food gardens, and passive design principles, and become a sustainable hubs for resilience. It can be a place of learning and teaching to educate communities to develop an eco-consciousness. And when such religious interventions are met in partnership with multi-stakeholders, it becomes a supportive structure for faith communities to do their interfaith work. A support structure to either assist in funding interfaith climate projects or providing educational, intergenerational education that empowers the youth. So spiritual dialogues and like these conferences can bring creative solutions to global humanitarian issues. So as a young woman practicing social and sustainable architecture, we build schools that have organic gardens that feed the communities. They also have rainwater harvesting with filtration systems with many other green technologies and passive design principles. So if the church, mosque, or temple became such a place for cities and communities, it changes the way society can function. The greening of religious spaces has the potential to uplift communities, helping to build resilient, safe, and sustainable cities. It helps to make our interfaith partnerships and collaborations resilient, leaving behind a legacy of practical working models based on principles of ethics, unity, peace, and harmonious, transparent relationships. So it depicts a way of life, one that cares and loves for the earth and its inhabitants. Diplomacy, interrelations, multi-stakeholders, and multi-religious collaboration is vital for a spiritual solidarity, for a moral, ethical voice, and a unified eco-impact. We all are interconnected and cannot solve our problems in isolation. And these unique dialogues and solutions are important for a greater impact to build a greater powerful message of love and unity. So the most important aspect of multisectoral collaboration is that it has to be in partnership with God and the earth. All these partnerships are human-based, and it won't work if it's driven from a place of selfishness, and if Mother Earth and God is not seen as the most important partner. So I just want to share very briefly and quickly about my experience. I work in the private sector as an architectural technologist, and it has been very difficult to form partnerships where people, especially governments and other sectors, believe in alternate architectural methods and green technologies. Because number one, there's lack of funding. Number two, there's lack of collaboration. And so for the past 8 months of my life, I've actually been unemployed. Okay? So it's because it's very hard to do sustainable and resilient and social architecture. And then the other aspect is I wear a different cap where I work in civil society as a climate activist. And sharing a solution, an example actually, of Durban recently has been hit by floods where 400 people died recently. And as a result of these floods, it has exposed the cities and how it's not resilient enough and how it's not maintained enough and how infrastructures are poorly maintained. And as a result, sewer pumps are not working currently in Durban. And so all this sewer is pumped into the oceans, into the rivers. Our beaches are closed. There's high levels of E. coli. The marine life are dying. A day, I have no water or electricity. So I think faith actors don't challenge government enough. And it's very sad because you left in a situation where you're despondent. And as a climate activist, you just can only move to a certain level where you can have petitions, rallies, communities can come together, but that's where it ends. So the next part I want to share is as a faith actor. So as a faith actor through Religions for Peace and being a youth member, in 2018 I won the Religions for Peace International Youth Peace Prize through the Religions for Peace Global Interfaith Youth Network. And with other youth we were given funding. And this has actually been like a saving grace. And it became as a support structure for myself to be able to do community work. And that was because I had a support structure from religious leaders such as Religions for Peace International through funding. And through this, I created the Religions for Peace Interfaith Youth Climate Forum. And through this forum, I was able to empower and uplift the youth by bringing eco-knowledge to them about climate change to create an eco-consciousness. So, and this was only possible with funding. So we challenged national policy level leaders. We tried to educate, engage, and advocate, and we tried to bring the community together by doing positive community projects, by connecting religion, religious scriptures, and spirituality to climate change. And so I just want to end off by giving 7 strategies that we use that could maybe benefit and be helpful to everyone. The first one was education. We had a lot of eco workshops and interfaith dialogues. We did a lot of school programs where we have teaching of scriptures from various religions to connect to Mother Earth, to understand what is climate change, the impacts of it, the actions of it on the earth, but also the impact of our actions in our daily behaviors and lifestyles. And so to bring about a change in having interfaith dialogues to change ourselves. The other one was spirituality. Connecting to Mother Earth, offering love and peace and meditation and prayers, and connecting to Mother Earth so we can bring about that internal change. And then we focused on community service and food security by planting trees, a lot of vegetable gardens on mass levels in schools, in communities, in faith centers. And we promoted especially certain plants like the vetiver grass and the speckbone tree, which helps to mitigate climate change. Then we worked on activism, where we got involved in petitions, marches, and we joined civil society. And then we looked at creativity, doing this in fun ways through art, song, and dance, especially for the younger generation and the younger youth. And then the last 2 strategies we used was multi-faith intergenerational partnerships. We saw that it was very important to partner up with other organizations, and some were like Greenpeace Africa, Religions for Peace South Africa, Actors Citizen Movement, 360.org, Habitat Foundation. And the more partnerships we had and more partnership events, we were able to learn more from each other, but also do more with our communities. And then lastly was social media. So being on the youth media team, I've learned that using social media in a positive way helps to change narratives. It also helps to show the work we are doing. It helps to mobilize people, inspire people, and get a movement going so that we can get the community together to do more things. So that's my interventions. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Marilyn. That was a very rich intervention, but there are a couple points that I really think we need to draw attention to. When you talked about the situation in Durban, I think it's important that when we talk about the crises, it's not the crises that are coming, it's the crises that are here. For many people around the world, particularly in the global south, they're feeling the consequences of economic inequality, environmental unsustainability right now. I also wanted to draw attention to the difficulties that you're facing when you talk about the lack of collaboration. So I think there's a need for really cultivating a new mindset and investing in the idea of multisectoral collaboration. And second, the lack of funding. So also very real material investment. The work that we need to do requires people to mobilize resources. So that's something that we need to critically focus on. Thank you so much, Marilyn. So now I'd like to move to a panelist who is joining us virtually from Indonesia, Professor Dr. Amane Lubis. She is the rector of the Sharif Hidayatullah State Islamic University and a member of the International Women's Coordinating Committee for Religions for Peace. Professor Dr. Lubis, please.
Thank you very much. Good morning to everyone. I'm sorry for being late. And thank you, Dr. Francis Curia, the moderator, I think. Yes, and I would like to thank also Religions for Peace, especially Professor Azza Karam for her invitation for me to attend this very important event. And I would like to apologize to the organizers and co-organizers, especially the mayor of Manresa, because I'm not be able to attend in person to Manresa, and unfortunately I should meet you virtually. Thank you very much. And as for the discussion about a multi-religious intergenerational response to the social and environmental crisis, this is very much in the interest of everybody in Indonesia, whether the religious leaders or the academicians and also young generations. So I'd like to highlight first the roles of educators and religious leaders for building a better human civilization. There are roles of the educators and religious leaders. First, provide the knowledge. Knowledge includes science, social, technology, religious values, and nationalism as a basis for building civilization and facing global challenges. And the second role, as supervisor and guide, we need the educators and religious leaders to evaluate and giving direction in line with the local, national, and international culture, religious norms, and humanity principles, so that all of the members of society can have information and also guide to live together peacefully and to also have concern about the environment. Third role is implementation and innovation. We need the implementation of knowledge and develop innovation by prioritizing values, norms, and religious teachings to sustainable environmental principles, so that we can also give attention to environmental matters to the all members of society. And the the fourth role, problem solver. So we need the experiences and advices from the educators, academicians, researchers, and also religious leaders to give various solutions and alternatives to the challenges of the society, and also about environment, because they have the knowledge and the data for giving the right solution. And of course, educators and religious leaders, they are agent of change. During the pandemic COVID-19, the role of religious leaders are very much respected, because they give the people, the believers, some kind of peace, and live with the pandemic peacefully, with with information needed to protect health, and also to have vaccine. In Indonesia, we are successful in this matter through the religious leaders. As an information, the population of Indonesia is 272 million. Almost 90% have the first vaccine, and the second vaccine around 150 million, and the booster, the third vaccine now is around 80 million of the population. So we face the pandemic with the role of religious leaders is very obvious. And now I talk about women and youth as agents of change in resolving climate change issues and promoting gender equality literacy. I myself, director of the biggest Islamic university in Jakarta, in Indonesia, and about gender equality, I persuasively give gender equality good attention by persuading all academic staff to include women in all of the activities, in all of the positions, important positions in the university. So this is one of my my efforts, but we need to improve all of the gender equality literacy in the society. And youth and women are the agent of change for climate change issues, and also technology innovation. In Indonesia, during the pandemic also, we improved very much the IT, so that we can do the education virtually, synchronic and asynchronic, so that we are not left behind for the education for the youth, so that we also have the role of in the global education. We have made very we have made collaboration and signed MOU with a lot of universities, well-known universities, so that we can also be recognized by the global. And now I talk about the smart cities. In Indonesia, we have a special also effort for smart cities. We develop eco mosques and eco churches, and the values of inclusivity. So in all of the establishment of the mosques and churches or the temples of the believers should be friendly to the environment. And all of these establishments also have IT, develop their own IT, and developing also e-commerce. So that smart cities in our definition is to be friendly to environment and using IT to improve the services and also the development of the society. The last thing I would like to say is about international network for peace and coexistence. Indonesia, with 6 recognized religions in the society, formally recognized 6 religions. So we live peacefully by making relationships, networking, by also giving the attributes or the efforts of tolerance, sharing, and also coexistence, living in our society. It's not the diversity in society is not the problem anymore. The diversity, we consider it as richness, as values added to our society. And I think this is the message to the international society, also global society, to consider differences and not to divide and also to separate, but to unite. So the motto is unity in diversity. Yeah, thank you very much, and I appreciate this excellent conference in Manresa, and I hope you all keep in health, and also someday I will visit Manresa. Thank you very much. God bless you.
Thank you, Professor Lubis. I think you touched on a number of critical points, just about the power of faith, or also just sort of religiously informed pedagogies on instilling knowledge in the community about the necessity of confronting crises of inequality or health crises or environmental crises. But what I also observed is that it's important that in positions of leadership, there's a clear understanding on the importance of engaging all these actors. You talked about the importance of youth, about the importance of women, but you are able to steward these sort of partnerships because you are in a position of power. So as an academic, as a woman of faith, but also as a university administrator, you can really invest in and cultivate these partnerships that you described at Sharif Hidayatullah University, which, as you said, is the largest Islamic university in Indonesia. It's just really amazing work. So now I'd like to move on to our next panelist, who I believe will have a lot of expertise or experience in cultivating partnerships. We have Reverend Peter Jorgensen, who's the Partnerships Development Officer for Religions for Peace Europe.
Thank you. Thank you all for sharing this moment together and for the interesting contributions just now. We are looking this morning at the different sectors working together for the good of the whole, for a sustainable city. My task is to open the topic for them from a political perspective, to reflect on the actions of the city government and its level of governance. What do good governance and religion have to do with each other. We take a step back in thought. Yesterday in the monastery, we understood what the life of the nuns and monks in the monasteries in the midst of nature carries for a cosmic wisdom of being part of the living whole. We, human beings, belong to an infinite context. We go back one more very big step. The Bible begins with the words, "In the beginning created God the heavens and the earth." It tells the story of a garden, Eden, as man's and woman's habitat, and it tells it as a memory when everything was still good, when man and woman was still in paradise. That was our home, the garden, the biodiversity, Eden. And now I want to look into the future, and I use words of the seer, the visioner, John, for this. In the Christian tradition, the Bible ends with the book of Revelation. There, heaven, paradise, is narrated and described as a city. I want to mark this shift from the garden to the city, the heavenly Jerusalem. I remind us of the contribution of Rabbi Rosen yesterday and send greetings to him in Jerusalem. The ideal, the paradise, is a city, a sustainable eternity city. In it, there is also room for wolves, panthers, and lions. They lie peacefully together with lambs, kids, and calves. And the fountains always have water. We live after Eden and do not yet have heaven on earth. Our present is critical. Our future is not rosy. But we have a hope that is greater than our human understanding. Our sister Asa Karam marked something very interesting in her opening speech. She welcomed us all as religious leaders, connecting generations, connecting genders, connecting religions. Leadership has many faces, and leadership takes place in various ways. Leadership does not always take place where we accept it to. So, what is good governance? What are failed cities? And where is it good to live? In Manresa. I quote the motto of the kibbutz movement. Everyone gives what they have and get what they need. Everyone helps and everyone is provided for. No one is needy. No one is useless. So, good governance seeks the good of all people and involves all. People's potentials are desired, needed, and put to use. To become effective for the togetherness of all, for the community of all. No one is left behind. That is why a good government asks the religions what they need to be able to live a good life. And it asks the believers what they need. Religious freedom is the right of every human being and contributes to the good of all. A good government asks religions what they can contribute to the good of all. It uses the possibilities that lie within religious communities. The interaction of religions, small and large, is particularly effective. They exercise in a special way the protection of minorities, the understanding for the other. Politicians are well advised to seek the advice of religion in order to govern well, because we humans are religious. Moreover, we bring something that goes beyond human beings, our faith, our hope, our love. I conclude by looking again at the sustainable, eternal city. There, the fountains always have water. Good government ensures that we all have enough water and that no one dies of thirst. All people, all living beings, should have access to the fountains. No one has the right to cut off the water of others. Only then does a government deserve to be called good, if everyone has access to clean water. This is meant both symbolically and very concretely. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Jorgensen. I think you really captured sort of what we're looking for when we're talking about like the need for truly inspiring and incentivizing people to engage in this work. What is it that can spur us to action? And I think this sort of like religiously informed or spiritually based imperatives that we feel is a strong force for humanity in many societies. And this can work us towards environmental sustainability as we're called to by whatever spiritual tradition we have. But also principles that we're really focusing on, like inclusion. I really liked that example about from the Kibitza movement about, everyone contributes, like we all share. There is shared contribution to the community, but there's also sort of a shared takeout. So all our needs are met. So I think that's really beautiful. So now we're moving on to someone that I think is very interesting that we have now, because much of this discussion focuses on the spiritual and the religious. And so now we're moving more into the earth sciences. We have Professor Jordi Soler, professor in the Department of Earth and Ocean Dynamics at the University of Barcelona, and an IPCC reviewer.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the organization to inviting me here. It's a wonderful place and also a wonderful situation and opportunity to learn from everyone that has been here, that it's here. And I will just talk from a totally different perspective, which is more, let's say, materialistic. But I think that has links to the philosophical, spiritual, and religious approaches. So first of all, I want to make a resume, just an abstract of what is the outline science on climate change and climate emergency, and also the ecological emergency that we have experiencing now. So first of all, I will just take a view of the IPCC. The IPCC reports, which are, the last report has been that last year and this year. And IPCC is the International Panel for Climate Change of the United Nations. And it has been released 6 reports till now. And each report alerts about the importance of the impacts of that human activities makes on the environment and the climate. Last report, as the previous ones, was just divided in 3 parts, work groups, 1, 2, and 3. Work group, it's for the physical science related to climate change. Work Group 2, it's about the impacts, and that means ecological and societal impacts. And Work 3, it's dealing with the part of the policies and adaptation and mitigation. Okay, so I was reviewer for the Work Group 3, and that's especially important because in that context, because we need to care about what are the main advice and policies that the science proposed to the politicians to make policies to mitigate and to adapt to climate crisis. I don't need to remember, but I will, that the climate change is affecting now harder and will be more harder. And also that the key message is that we have only a decade, so 10 years, to make disruptive, transformative, deep changes, huge changes in society, economy, and way of living to avoid a disaster. Disaster means that we are facing scenarios that in the worst case will be facing human extinction in the earth, but not only human extinction, also a lot of species and a huge transformation of all the world that as we now know. So the challenge is huge. And in the last IPCC reports, particularly Work Group 2, it's pointing out that we need deep transformations and also to change, also in some key paragraphs, it's pointing out that is needed a deep transformation of the economic system. We need to move from an economy that is based in growth, inequality, let's say social difference, more resources for the rich, less resources for the poor, and so on, just hoping that as the rich get richer, the poor get a little bit more, but only a little bit more. And that it's just very clear shown in the COP conferences. Last COP 26 fails. This COP 27 also fails. Fails in the key messages. First message is that we need to keep underground, for instance, a lot of fossil fuels. And we have not, at the moment, any clear policy on how to do that. And we have, that is more painful, let's say, which we don't have a global agreement on how to transfer money and resources from the global north to the global south. And that is key. And that is key because the problem is near-term view compared versus mid and long-term view. So our policymakers or politicians are concerned about economic crisis because economic crisis in the global north means problems. But they are not aware that the global south is permanently in an economic crisis. Lack of resources, lack of water, lack of food, and lack of help in the growing and more intense extreme climate events. So that is the first part, and I will move from more a personal vision based on complex systems and system analysis and system dynamic analysis based on the literature, that is scientific literature too, and the view is that we need to transform our current paradigm. That means transformation at 3 levels: individual, social, and let's say global governance. Okay, but we need to act simultaneously at that 3 levels. But I will focus on the individual level. Why? Because from individuals starts everything. So how we see the society, how we see the others, and how we interact with them will determine how politicians, how social movements will act. So we need to change the paradigm, current paradigm, which is based on selfish and egocentric approach, telling us that you need to be happy, yourself to be happy, need to be happy, and to be happy you need a lot of resources. As much as you can, as much as you will, as much as you want, you will be more happy. But that is not true, because that will mean that multimillionaires will be happy and never get depressed. But that is not true, we know, right? So the problem is that we are we are functioning based on a lie. And we construct our hopes, our future, based on a lie. We'll need less than we use currently. But we need more than we are having now, today, because we need more social interactions, we need more social care, we need more loved ones, we need more empathy, and we don't have it. If we change the view that how we see the others, then we will change the entire society, and then we'll change the politicians, and then we'll change the policies. Of course, we need to construct based on the social justice. That is the key. But we also need, and I just currently go for the media and telling about the climate change, and the journalist also asked me to how to transmit, to keep the message and to give the message. And one problem is that we don't have a narrative. We don't have a clear narrative to explain the message and to spread the message. And I think that the philosophy, the spirituality, and the religions are the key actors for that. Because you already have the message, right? It's based on human values. It's based on altruism, empathy, care for the other, construct society, construct brotherhood, right? So that is the key. But we need to make that in a global message with key points that will be easy understood in a global society. So the problem is that how to take the particular views of the different religions and spiritualities, transform them in a current message, a modern message, a global message. That will be one good contribution. So, just to finish, the thing is that based on the society and the cities, also that is important because the big part of the global population now is living on the cities. So from a complex system view, cities can act as a nodes in a global network to make transformations in two directions. First direction and that has been also mentioned, cities being more resilient, being more green, being more sustainable, but also we need to compensate because now there is a stronger and the trend is to make the cities bigger and more unsustainable. So we need to change that view and just compensate that. Okay, cities are good, cities are necessary, but we need also that the cities support the rural areas. That's key, because the resources are not in the cities. The resources are in the rural areas, right? Where is the food is cultivated, right? So we need also a city approach that look at the rural areas as an important part of the cities, providers of resources, providers of that view of the more integrated human in the nature. When we go to the forest, we feel that nature it's part of us and we are part of the nature, right? But that is not in the cities. That is at the rural area. And we need to value that. I'm not saying that the cities are not important, that we not to keep the cities, but we need also to make that balance between the cities and rural areas. So that's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I really love that intervention. What drew my attention was the congruence and the coherence between what you're saying and what a lot of sort of people come from religious or theological backgrounds, sort of the interventions from Reverend Jorgensen and Reverend Cato. So Reverend Cato was talking about the importance of being in harmony, but you're also sort of describing like the need for harmony also in like urban processes, also between the urban and the rural. And it's also sort of amazing sort of the need for transformation. I mean, we're all here in honor of St. Ignatius, whose sort of important work was about self-reflection, about the power of transformation. And you're also talking about the need of us all to engage in personal, social, and also global sort of transformation. So I think it's really critical that sort of we form the sort of partnerships and work that can really guide and inspire this change that we really need. As you said, 10 years. This is 10 years. We need to make radical change. Thank you so much. So now we're moving on to our final panelist, and I think he'll provide a very unique perspective because we've talked a lot about academia, we've talked about religious organizations, the private sector, but also we want to talk about civic leaders. So we have Mr. Paul Huguet Estrada, who is a counselor for sustainability here in the city of Manresa.
Okay, good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you. I hope I can say anything interesting after all I've heard. And if it's not a problem, I will try to do the explanation in Catalan. So if you need to put your headphones on, so at least local people will hear some words in our beloved language. But of course, if you need any help, I can translate whatever. Doncs, com se'ns havia demanat, avui això anem a parlar una mica de les dificultats. Si estem aquí és perquè, com s'ha dit prèviament, el món no és de color de rosa i tenim problemes molt greus i la pregunta és si fa tant temps que sabem que tenim problemes greus, com és que no fem res? I llavors un dels encàrrecs era anem a analitzar què és el que passa, quins són els impediments, quines són les dificultats perquè avancem en la lluita contra el canvi climàtic. Una mica de context, evidentment, és obvi, estem parlant de crisi climàtica, però també, més recentment, de la crisi energètica, de materials, els preus disparats de l'energia, la dificultat de les empreses per obtenir materials. Personalment, penso que erròniament s'ha volgut culpabilitzar exclusivament la guerra d'Ucraïna, però això ja venia d'abans i continuarà després. I també ha sortit una mica, tenim una crisi molt potent o molt dura en la biodiversitat, i per biodiversitat entenem la diversitat d'espècies de plantes, d'animals, inclosos nosaltres mateixos, que estem patint segurament una crisi també de salut física i mental, pels mateixos problemes que molts dels nostres companys, diguéssim, de la biosfera. Tenim uns reptes molt globals, amb conseqüències molt locals. I segurament un dels impediments que tenim és aquesta dificultat per veure una resposta, o sigui, com des del meu poble, des de la meva ciutat, des de la meva família, des de casa meva, puc fer alguna cosa, puc donar alguna resposta local a un repte que sembla tan inabastable. Per mi aquestes són les dificultats que fa que ens costi, perquè ens sembla molt difícil. També hi ha una altra dificultat, que en aquest cas jo vull parlar del cas local de Manresa, de Catalunya, encara gràcies. No soc gens expert en què passa a la resta del món i per tant el que explico aquí potser no és replicable. Però tenim un associacionisme, crec que bona part d'Europa, com a mínim, potser en el món anglosaxó i nòrdic no és tan així, central, però com a mínim al sud d'Europa crec que és molt així, un associacionisme molt fragmentat, molt fràgil, poques persones estan associades i col·laboren en la lluita contra el canvi climàtic o en temes ambientals, Sovint tenim plataformes molt petites creades específicament per dir no a una iniciativa concreta i que, per tant, tenen aquesta voluntat d'oposició, de defensar una cosa concreta, però no de construir alternatives. I això, com a país, és una gran mancança que tenim. També aquestes entitats que són tan petites, molt sovint, doncs, com és obvi, estan formades per voluntaris, però si no arriben a cert nivell de socis no tenen la capacitat de professionalitzar-se i poder disposar de prou quotes de socis per pagar a un tècnic és una gran diferència. Tenir alguna persona que pugui treballar tot el dia, tota la setmana, tot l'any per organitzar, per col·laborar, perquè les activitats de voluntariat també requereixen feina, requereixen hores, requereixen recursos, s'han de buscar subvencions, justificar-les, parlar i especialitzar-se en relacionar-se amb les administracions. I això, malauradament, les associacions que només tenen voluntaris ho tenen molt difícil. No és impossible, però ho tenen més difícil. I per altra banda, hi ha una concepció ciutadana, crec molt pròpia en el nostre país i segurament en altres, com s'ha dit també aquí, molt individualista i també molt associada amb una democràcia immadura, que és que jo ja decideixo, jo ja pago els meus impostos, l'Estat, l'administració ja m'ho solucionarà tot. I hem de passar d'aquesta actitud a ser copartíceps, a codissenyar, a cogestionar les polítiques ambientals, com també totes les altres. I també patim com a administracions, i per tant aquí no hem vingut a posar-nos medalles, el propi Ajuntament de Manresa, com tants ajuntaments i com tants governs, patim una situació que és que fins ara el medi ambient era quelcom totalment secundari, era una cosa que estava bé parlar-ne, que quedava bé parlar-ne, però que sovint es traduïa en ben poca cosa, perquè semblava que era només una dèria de 4 ecologistes. A dia d'avui hem vist que és totalment indispensable treballar pel medi ambient i de sobte ens trobem que ni tenim com a administracions les eines, que no tenim el personal, que no tenim els coneixements, que no tenim els recursos i per dur a terme aquelles accions que siguin necessàries. Els ajuntaments s'han construït per donar resposta a les necessitats de l'urbanisme, als serveis socials, etc., però de personal que es pugui dedicar, de recursos o de coneixements dedicats a això, als temes ambientals, en són molt pocs. I per tant és molt important que hi hagi fòrums de debat com aquests, també per intercanviar experiències, per adonar-nos que hi ha altres llocs on sí que estan fent més bona feina que no pas nosaltres, però també segurament tenim alguna cosa positiva a aportar. I tornem a parlar molt específicament en clau local, en clau manresana o catalana. Aquí tenim una particularitat, ja que estem parlant de confessions religioses també, que segurament aquí el fet multireligiós és relativament recent, fa poques dècades que tenim una gran diversitat de religions a la ciutat i segurament encara estem patint cert estancament, vull dir que moltes d'aquestes religions, evidentment hi ha iniciatives molt positives, valuoses de taula de diàleg interreligiós, però a nivell social encara vivim, almenys la nostra generació, molt estancats amb la seva cultura, amb la seva religió. No és el cas dels nostres infants, que ja des que han nascut han viscut amb una realitat molt més diversa que no pas nosaltres. També hi ha una manca d'arrelament per part de molta gent, no només d'aquells que fa dècades o generacions que viuen aquí, que s'han desarrelat, com deia el company Jordi Soler, aquelles persones que viuen en una ciutat de fa molt temps, que s'han desarrelat del seu context rural, forestal, però també de les persones vingudes en aquestes últimes dècades de l'altra punta del món, que no s'han pogut arrelar, i per mi és el meu concepte molt particular, arrelar-se en un lloc vol dir moltes coses, vull dir, relacionar-se amb la gent, estimar-se la gent, però també estimar-se la terra, estimar-se l'entorn, conèixer l'entorn de la seva ciutat. Per mi, jo no concebeixo estar arrelat a Manresa sense conèixer les muntanyes, els rius, les rieres, les fonts que hi ha al nostre voltant. I al revés, per mi és una molt bona eina conèixer aquest entorn natural és una molt bona eina perquè tothom es pugui sentir arrelat a la seva ciutat. I això també ens ho comentava, no? El Tashikato del Japó, vull que hem de passar a sentir-nos part de la natura. En educació ambiental sovint es diu que primer de tot cal conèixer aquest entorn natural, conèixer-lo és el primer pas per després poder-te l'estimar, i si te l'estimes el voldràs protegir. Això no és automàtic. Per poder estimar-te un espai has de viure aventures i has de tenir emocions, has de tenir records vinculats. Per tant, quan amb la família, quan amb l'escola vas d'excursió, això, al riu, a la muntanya, al bosc, que tens al costat de casa i tens uns records associats amb aquell espai, no voldràs que allò desaparegui. Voldràs que allò pervisqui, que millori, etc. I, tot i que he pintat un panorama potser una mica crític, que és una mica el que se'ns demana també crec que hi ha certa esperança, si no, òbviament no seríem aquí. I vaig a posar exemples que són molt petitons, són molt concrets, d'escoles, de casos així de Manresa, però que fan veure que hi ha cert canvi de tendència. I és que crec que una de les claus és que hi hagi molta més sensibilització ambiental. I això, últimament, que per feina, diguéssim, em toca, ho estic percebent quan vaig a escoles, quan a instituts, perquè primer de tot hi vaig, potser vaig començar com a regidor fa 4 anys, i en 4 anys ha canviat, diguéssim, el panorama com un mitjó. Fa 4 anys a les escoles no els preocupava especialment el tema ambiental, arriba la Covid, hi ha escoles que no poden fer classe en les seves aules perquè són petites, perquè hi fa calor, perquè no es poden ventilar, i descobreixen que darrere de les parets de l'escola hi ha uns parcs, hi ha uns boscos, hi ha uns rius, i van, se n'enamoren, diuen, hòstia, que bé fer classe aquí, que profitós, amb quin estat anímic tan diferent que estan els alumnes, vull dir, la natura com un espai, un lloc bo, que dèiem els escoltes, en el qual la gent està predisposada a establir nous lligams, hi ha unes relacions molt més sanes, el nostre cervell està més tranquil, per tant més predisposat a viure experiències en profunditat que no pas a dins d'una aula tancada. Doncs alguna d'aquestes escoles, que dèiem que va descobrir aquests espais, doncs al cap de 2 mesos ens diu, ostres, aquests espais estan bruts, hi ha deixalles, i a diferència del que ens passava fins ara, que és un ajuntament fes-m'ho tu, és un, ei, tinc ganes de com a escola d'anar-ho a netejar, d'anar-ho a millorar. Ens hi ajudeu com a ajuntament? Doncs evidentment, us ajudarem posant material, posant els contenidors, el que faci falta. O hi ha escoles que van cada dia de la setmana al riu Cardener, que és el riu d'aquí al costat, on Sant Ignasi es va inspirar, diguéssim, doncs van a fer classe. Els nens de P3, d'infantil, de 3 anys, de 4 anys, de 5 anys, un dia a la setmana van a fer classe, a passar el dia al riu. Ja està, a no fer res més que això, a jugar, a viure de la natura, en una ciutat. Per tant, hem de trencar aquest esquema de que la ciutat està allunyada de la natura. No, la natura ha d'entrar a la ciutat, com és aquest cas. O, evidentment, tenim escoles que ens demanen que volen enverdir els seus patis, que volen més ombra, que volen més natura, que volen jardins per pol·linitzadors, i que han fet de la natura un dels seus pilars. Hi ha un institut aquí a Manresa, el Lluís de Peguera, que a segon d'ESO, els alumnes de 13-14 anys, dediquen 8 hores a la setmana a fer el que en diuen un projecte globalitzat, que és a partir d'un repte concret que es planteja a inici de curs, que en aquest cas concret va ser com des de l'institut, com els joves podeu millorar la vostra relació amb la natura i com fer de Manresa una ciutat més sostenible, una cosa així molt ambigua potser o molt oberta, doncs estan 8 hores a la setmana fent projectes en els quals treballen llengua, comunicació, noves tecnologies, etc., tot sobre aquest focus, sobre el focus ambiental i, per tant, fent projectes, fent entrevistes, fent de reporters, transformant ells directament el seu pati, anant a conèixer experiències de Catalunya, etc. Per tant, hi ha aquesta sensibilitat que ha canviat per part d'alumnes, però per part també dels mestres, dels docents, dels professors, cosa que celebro moltíssim perquè per mi és una novetat que fa 4 anys era totalment inexistent. I això ens fa pensar que tenim oportunitats, que si hi ha ganes i necessitat d'actuar, que sembla que hi són, podem abordar aquest repte gegant, que és un repte gegant fet de molts petits reptes. Quan ens imaginem la crisi climàtica és una cosa inabastable, llavors és més fàcil de dir, hosti, si no puc fer res, és tan complicat, me'n desentenc i mira, ja ho farà algú altre, o no, i no passa res. Hem d'entendre que està fet de moltes petites responsabilitats i jo crec que si es divideix aquest gran repte en molts petits reptes, hi ha petites solucions a l'abast de tothom. I tothom, s'ha dit també prèviament, ha de percebre que té a l'abast actuacions per millorar el planeta. I quan ho fas, t'hi enganxes. Sentir que estàs fent alguna cosa positiva pel planeta és gratificant, et fa sentir ple, et fa sentir gratificat, per tant, cal segurament provar-ho per qui no ho hagi fet. I segurament, i amb això vaig acabant, de la mateixa manera que totes les confessions multireligioses es van posar a treballar davant d'una pandèmia sanitària o per objectius socials, cosa que a Manresa s'ha fet amb molt èxit, doncs segurament calia evidenciar que teníem un objectiu clar també en temes ambientals, que era acceptat per tothom, que potser fa uns anys no era així, i és que combatre el canvi climàtic és una emergència no només ambiental, sinó que ho és també social. No podrem tenir una vida digna, no podrem tenir una vida de qualitat si no tenim un ecosistema, un planeta amb una natura de qualitat. Per tant, amb aquest objectiu compartit, segurament per totes les religions, per totes les persones, per totes les generacions, l'eina és el pilar pel qual o és el motiu pel qual ens podem posar d'acord, podem col·laborar i passar a l'acció. Moltes gràcies.
Thank you for that intervention. I really appreciate just by beginning that you didn't have the rose-tinted glasses. It's a serious crisis for a lot of communities. So at the municipal level, at the national level, and also at the international level, about how do we mobilize resources and work to address these problems. It's a structural problem. As Professor Soleil mentioned earlier, we're dealing with a market that's undergirded by growth, hyperconsumption, and profit-driven. So this is really hard to change. But it's really beautiful, just that example of you sort of being learned to be immersed in their community. So they're really committed and that they're invested in public spaces and in nature. So I'm wondering, how can we take that sort of work and make it global? Because as we know, we have a global crisis. So just like we get a child to commit to or being invested in a stream, how does someone in New York get invested in the infrastructure problems in Durban or a cholera outbreak in a migrant camp in Lebanon? So I really wonder, I think moving forward, that's something that we really need to think on and focus on. Thank you so much. We're running behind, but we did want to offer the audience to ask some questions from the audience and ask questions from the panelists. So could you raise your hand? Okay.
We want to concentrate on comments so that we might not have an exchange. So if you have an intervention.
Very, very short.
Very short.
Yeah.
Buenos días. Mi nombre es Alejandro y soy colombiano. Todo es muy importante. Porque estábamos hablando del climático. Bueno, es importante también tener en cuenta de que nosotros somos copartícipes de ese proyecto que hay entre hermanos. Nosotros, en la parte espiritual, tenemos que aportar la esencia de que es Dios el que nos debe conllevar al objetivo, porque en la unidad, en la participación, todos debemos instruirnos moral y socialmente. Ya que estamos aquí todos los religiosos, debemos tomar conciencia de que Dios es uno, que, como decía uno de los proponentes, la creación, el paraíso, donde nacimos, nos formamos, pero que por el pecado
You need to cut. You need to cut.
Yeah. I'm sorry, sir, but we want a couple more interventions from the rest of the audience, and we're a little low on time, sorry.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much to the panelists, and I really appreciate the mix of religious and kind of the environmental science perspectives on this panel is really great. My name's Sarah. I'm from South Africa and representing URI. And I just had a question about this idea of shifting the narrative, because I think that's really important, and this idea that we need to shift from what I would call a kind of business as usual, just keeping going in this routine that we're in, and really disrupting that. But I worry, or my concern is, are our religious leaders in agreement about what that shift of narrative should be? I'd be curious whether you think that there is a sense of agreement about what that shift of narrative is and what it should look like. Thank you.
We come in front.
Bé, bon dia. Només demanar al regidor de Manresa que potser seria interessant, ja que estem en un debat internacional, conèixer aspectes de la gestió tant de l'aigua com de l'energia, en el sentit de que en molts casos el canvi climàtic té a veure, aquí s'ha vist molt al tercer món, on llocs fora d'Europa el tema de l'aigua és cabdal ja en aquests moments. I el tema de l'energia potser aquí no n'érem conscients, però ja ho és, més no per la pujada de preus. I això ha fet que hagin aparegut noves fórmules de col·laboració privat-públic per crear comunitats energètiques. Si es pogués explicar la tradició que hi ha aquí de comunitats d'aigua o comunitats d'energia, crec que pot ser un element. Europa està molt laïcitzada, però el resta del món no. Llavors, algunes comunitats segurament potser ja ho practiquen, comunitats religioses, podien passar a donar serveis més enllà del social, en alguns casos probablement afegir aspectes d'aquest tipus. Com a mínim l'explicació del que està funcionant per aquí, en alguns casos, com a bones pràctiques.
Well, I'd like to give Paul an opportunity to respond to that question. If he has time for short, we're very short on time, so a very brief answer. And then I'd like to give an opportunity to the panelists to respond to that question provided by Sarah from South Africa about, do you think there actually is coherence and agreement among religious leaders on the necessity of transforming mindsets?
Res, molt breu. En el cas de l'aigua, a Manresa tenim la sort que des de fa molts anys, des de fa dècades, està gestionada per una empresa pública i això és una de les singularitats, no és així a tot Catalunya en cap cas i per tant abans es parlava de la igualtat, ha sortit el cas, comentava, que totes les fonts han de rajar, dèiem, i que tothom ha de tenir accés a l'aigua, i aquí ho hem tingut sempre clar, i que en èpoques de crisi social hem estat dels primers ajuntaments que hem posat comptadors socials perquè tothom pugui tenir accés a l'aigua i que la falta de diners no sigui un problema. I evidentment això et fa, no sé, aquest exemple ens ha servit per ara, tot just ara, fer un pas més i fer el mateix amb l'energia. En resum, els béns essencials que és poder beure aigua i tenir una mínima quantitat digna d'energia, no cap gran quantitat per malbaratar-la, sinó una mínima quantitat per poder tenir una certa qualitat de vida, han de ser en mans públiques o han de tenir com a mínim aquesta vocació pública, tant pel que fa al consum de les famílies com de les empreses. I d'aquí ve, per exemple, que recentment un dels polígons industrials més grans de Manresa han decidit col·laborar entre ells i constituir una comunitat energètica que es tradueix en que conjuntament produiran, compartiran i consumiran energia que generaran a les seves pròpies cobertes, amb plaques solars, amb centrals de biomassa, etc. En resum, no podem deixar que els béns essencials com l'aigua i l'energia estiguin a la mercè dels interessos de les grans empreses, si no ja sabem on ens porta.
Thank you. And do any of the panelists have a response to the question about our religious leaders and the need to transform mindsets? Reverend Jorgensen? Yes? No? Maybe?
Yeah. The question to change the narrative. You started your speech with the comment, this is now not a religious or philosophical statement, but it was deeply religious statement for me that you guided us what is necessary to shift the narrative, to have a new story, what we are belonging for and what our need is and what the way can be together on a path like we walked together here 2 days ago. So it is part of a new narrative we can learn from you. Thank you.
Marilyn?
I would say yes and no. So yes, because being so long with Religions for Peace International, there's plenty of resources. And one of the resources that we use, especially in our projects, is called the Religions for Peace Resource Guide on Climate Change for Religious Communities. And we came across this resource when we did an eco-workshop with Green Faith in 2018 in Krakow, Poland. As a side event to COP, Religions for Peace International did that workshop. And so it's a very rich narrative and it's a very rich resource guide about all the religions and how you can learn about climate change and the narratives of it. And it's a quite good resource book to educate the community. And we've been using that a lot. So I would say, yes, the resources are there, our scriptural teachings are there, the knowledge is there. There's such a rich religious leaders that have such rich knowledge. But we could maybe put it more better in a narrative, and we could maybe go more into storytelling. So this could actually we need to put strategic, concrete plans into creating a more better narrative, but we do have the resources there.
Sweet. Thank you, Reverend Cotto. Do you have any final remark before we move on to our musical interlude?
As for the shifting the narrative, and I think that people with the acceleration of information on the internet, people are really forced to decide in a short time thinking. So, but religion is really based on the history and philosophy. So we are able to think more long term. I think this idea could be we just together to and put forward this kind of long term thinking. It could be bring the benefit to the world. Yeah.
Thank you. And before our beloved MC announce the next stage in this conference, I would just like to invite everyone to give another applause for our panelists.
A continuació tindrà lloc la intervenció de la ballarina vegenca Nàdia Pessarrodona Rovira i el violinista manresà Arnau Barrios Vinyes, que interpretaran la peça de música i dansa sobre l'acollida i la transformació creada per a l'acció Hora 2022 dins del projecte Manresa 2022. En aquests moments, el Congrés es pren un descans de 20 minuts. Els assistents poden abandonar la sala, tot recordant-los que cal que s'adrecin al punt d'informació situat a l'entrada de l'auditori per apuntar-se als tallers a la ciutat d'avui a la tarda. Els participants virtuals poden tancar la seva sessió i obrir la següent, titulada Panell 2, programada per a les 11:10. Moltes gràcies.